Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Welcome to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where truth has no limits and authenticity is the only currency. I want to say a big thank you to everyone listening. It's because of you that this podcast is able to thrive. Be sure to tell a friend who may like Boundless Authenticity, and don't forget to like and follow if you're new here. Also, if you're looking for deep dives on taboo topics that you can't get elsewhere, our Spreaker Supporters Club holds the exclusive conversations that most people will probably never hear. And it's all curated and made by yours truly, so don't get left out. Join now. But today's guest, RJ Fisher, wow, she knows the darkest corners of the human mind and the light that can break through. She works within the prison system as a writer, a qualitative researcher, and motivational speaker exploring the why behind crime, trauma, and transformation. RJ holds a degree in criminal justice from Penn State, studied urban ministry at Moody Bible Institute, and has worked in the fields of urban solutions, archaeology, and mental health. RJ resides in the countryside with her boyfriend, their 6 children, and plethora of pets. Her acclaimed true crime novel, The Girl That Got Out, has earned praise in the psychological community, and her latest, The Trauma Recovery Workbook, offers powerful steps for healing. So go check that out. And I would like to also point out that RJ is available on Instagram at Girl That Got Out and girlthatgotout.com. And she's going to share stories that matter, and we're going to have a good time, I think.
Yes, definitely.
So how's it going where you're at?
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful rainy day. It's wonderful. It's my favorite weather. So
I need
it's
some.
been nice. Yeah, we definitely, it's been so dry here. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I got to give a shout out to Dave Roberts. He's my idol. I saw him post your interview and I was like, wow. Now, do I want to listen to this interview or do I want to interview her? Because just the write-up alone was like, explosion. So let's dive right into that. How did you, what made you decide that you wanted to get into criminology and all of that?
I have always been fascinated with the human mind. Since I was a child, there was some mental health issues with other family members, and I was super just curious about that and how to handle that and how to make that work in the world. So I wanted to work with people that just have the hardest time controlling their mind and controlling what they do. And the prison really felt where my heart was led at a young age. I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Wilson, but when I was 12 years old, I heard him speak, and he runs Sunday schools in New York City for children. And everything's free, and they just get the kids off the streets for a little while and give them something good. And that was super impactful. So I wanted to go where the most pain was, the most darkness was, where just, where society just falls off the earth. And so the prison really just caught my attention. I did some groups in the county prison, and I originally started with urban ministry. So we would just go into the ghettos. I went to school in Chicago, so we would just go into there and worked at the homeless shelters, things like that. So just super interested in finding solutions to the pain and the suffering, the generational curses that just keep getting passed down. So that's kind of where everything stemmed from.
To go along with that, then, what are the most common reasons that you've seen people end up in prison?
Well, murder and robbery are pretty much the two main ones. Murder, I feel like most of the cases, honestly, are just from gang violence. And so it's just kind of a credibility thing. Like, you have to do it to survive. The other person's going to shoot you. So it's just, it's a survival of the fittest, I feel like, is the biggest reason. People growing up in that environment, that's all they know. That's all they know with their families. I've been working with a juvenile block for this past year, and they're under 18, but they've been sentenced as an adult. So they're between 16 and 18 years old. And a lot of them, their uncle just handed them a gun and said, I need you to go shoot this person. And that's why they're there. So you see a lot of that. And a lot of the robbery is just related to drug use. people get addicted and they don't have the money for it. And so they end up doing robberies and robbing gas stations and people's houses. And those are the two main reasons. Like I said, generational and also addiction.
I'm glad you said that. I just kind of wanted you to paint a compassionate picture of the people in prison, because we get conditioned to think that it's just bad people that do bad stuff, but it's hardly ever really that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm so obsessed with it, and I've really tried to like figure it out, because I feel like there's just components to each of us, and a lot of us, it's where we were born, that plays a component, and or the people in our lives, like the way that we grew up, that is a component into it. And then also your own brain. Some people are just predisposed to things, and some people have mental illness that, they're born with. And so you put all three of those factors together, and if all three of those are just negative factors, you're going to end up behind bars or dead. I mean, that's pretty much the two choices that they end up with. And so just trying to find how to combat that, trying to show them that there's something different, trying to rewire the whole environmental background and everything. It's a challenge, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat.
Okay. So let's jump into some of your experiences. Where do you want to start? Start when you were a baby.
Was a baby? Okay. That was the hardest pregnancy my mom had. I guess as a child, so I grew up, I was homeschooled. I was one of 5 kids. So I have 4 brothers, and we grew up in the woods. So we were just straight up, we were feral children. Being alone, like I did go to church and we did have homeschool groups, but I was alone most of the time. And then just being the only girl and 4 boys, I was just kind of extra alone. So I spent a lot of time in the woods. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about my life, is that I was able to focus for the first 18 years. I read a lot of philosophy. I read a lot of literature and religion. And so I was kind of like set apart from humanity, and I could just kind of watch it and learn about it. And then when I hit 18, I went out there and hit the streets. I was like, let's go check this out and like see what everything is. So it gave me kind of a foundation to stand on when I was interacting with people. And I'd had a lot of animals. Sounds funny, but like being out in the woods and everything, the animals and the trees were literally just, those were my people. Like that was like my family. And realizing that humans are a lot like that, because like, a snake is a snake, and a hawk is a hawk, and a rabbit is a rabbit, and everybody is what they are. Like they might pretend that they're something else or pretend, but at the end of the day, their nature and what they are and their design is what they are. And once you know what a person is, then you can accept that, even though, it may not be what you do or how you see things. It's okay to be different, because if nature wasn't different, well, we would be overrun with rabbits or snakes or hawks, So it just all ties in together. And I think that gave me a really good foundation for the rest of my life.
I definitely don't want to paint a negative picture of humans, because they're good at doing that on their own. But animals are great, because you always know exactly what to expect from an animal. It's like you said, yes. A snake is always going to be a snake. And that's just the way it is. And so you can't really get, I guess people could get upset, but you really shouldn't get upset when a snake does snake things. So
right. It's just what it is. And humans, like I said, humans are like that too. However, we have the capacity to hide it. So
that's the deceptive thing. But I was going to ask you, I mean, that is such a great mini story that you told there. I bet that just being around nature and being around animals for so long really did something for your consciousness.
1,000,000%. When I was 5 years old, I had my first experience just seeing something. So my 2 older brothers, they were not very fond of me when we were little. I was the like annoying little sister. So they took me out into the woods the one day when I was 5 years old, and they left me out there. they told me to stay there and wait for them. And then they went back home. And there's a big pond out at the bottom of the hill there. So I was started to like go towards that. And I just remember like looking out over the trees, and there was just these huge figures. There was these two figures. And thought they were like Transformers or something, but they were see-through. And so I just kind of like I didn't interact or anything. I just stared at them and I didn't say anything, but I didn't move either. So my mom was able to find me when she came back to the Woods, because when they returned to the house, they were like, oh yeah, we left her back there. And she was like, oh my gosh. So from that time on, from 5 years old, I kind of had experiences just because, like I said, I always feel like my mind was very pure as a child, because I didn't have all the noise. We weren't allowed to watch TV. So I didn't have TV, and I didn't really have a bunch of music. So I really had no outside noise. It just wasn't a thing. And so I was able to pick up on things. I had a lot of dreams when I was 12 that, were futuristic. And I love to play with the timeline. The timeline is fun for me because it just seems like it glitches sometimes, and you can kind of pick up on things from the past. You can pick up on things from the future. I haven't delved too far into it because I do feel some things should not be messed with. But it just is what it is. And if I'm quiet enough now, I can still see things or pick up on things. So that did come to play later on in life. I kind of tried to, just be normal and shut things out in my 20s. And I just wanted to explore humanity and do, whatever. And I had gotten married, and then that didn't work out. And the first guy I dated after that, we kind of had a connection, and it was pretty cool. And the one day I was playing piano in the church. I like to play piano, and I had keys to the church because I used to teach there. And so I'm playing piano, and he's just listening to me. And he was like, he's like, play something upbeat, because I started getting into my feelings and I started feeling really heavy. I felt dark. So I was playing sad songs, and he was like, play something upbeat, play something happy. And I was like, okay. So I was trying to play but I just kept getting heavier and heavier. And these thoughts from my past were coming into my head. And I was crying, and it was just like this dark moment for me. Like I just felt it. And he was like, get out of the church right now. And I was like, no, I'm playing music. Like, leave me alone. He's like, no, get out of the church. So we left the church, and I was like, what's the matter with you? I was like, why did we need to leave? And he was like, as you were playing music, he said something was in the back. He's like, and it came down the center aisle. And he's like, the more you played, the closer it came to you. And he's like, and I don't know what it is, but we had to get out of here. So I'm like, okay, like whatever, I was like, draw what you saw. Like, let me see I was like, you draw what you saw, and I'll draw what I've seen since I was a child. So we both drew the same thing, and it was exactly the same. Characteristics, everything was exactly the same. So it was just kind of a weird moment that, being empathetic and seeing things was always my world, and it wasn't other people's world. And so to see something kind of cross over a little bit like that was weird. But nothing more happened after that. And we just ended up, he had an explosive temper. He just had a lot going on in his life that he needed to figure out. And I was recently divorced. And so I broke it off, and I was like, I need to figure myself out, and you need to figure yourself out. It's over. So about 6 months of silence. And then he shows up at my house, and he's like, we just need to talk. And I was like, okay. So I invite him in, we have breakfast. And then I said, I need to go to work. And he was like, you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, no, for real. Like, I got to go to work. And he pulled a can of mace and a knife out of his backpack. He's like, no, for real. You're not going anywhere. And, I thought, like, it was so surreal. I was like, this isn't a real thing. This is I don't know. It's like a joke or something. And so I was just kind of laughed, and I was like, no, like, I got to go. And I ran, and I ran past him. I tried to get out the front door, but he caught me. He threw my phone out the front door, and we're fighting for the door, and I'm yelling, and he maced me, and then he was hitting me, and he finally got the knife to my throat. And I stopped, and I was like, okay. And he drug me back in. And he tied me up, and we're just sitting there, and I'm trying to, wrap my head around what's happening right now and why. And he went into the bathroom to just kind of clean up, and he left me out there. So I was sitting out there, and I'm staring out the window, and I'm just like, you got to get me out of here. Like, I was praying. I was like, God, you have to get me out of here. Like, you just got to get me out. Like, I had a 5-year-old son at the time. And it really just felt in my heart that he said, I don't promise to get you out of here, but I promise that I will be with you through all of it. And those words just really calmed me down, which is, kind of weird looking back on, and like sitting here where everything's normal. It doesn't sound very like peaceful, but it was at the time, because I was terrified of what I was facing ahead of me. Like, I just, it was like the news stories, and you were just like, I'm going to be that girl in the dumpster, and it's just, how can this be a thing? So he came back out, and we were just talking, and we were talking about what had happened over the last 6 months. And he told me that thing that we saw that day, he had challenged it, and he told it to get away from me, or it had to go through him. And he said, I couldn't win. I didn't beat it. And so his face would just change, and he was all over the place, but he would be crying one minute saying that he loved me and that he didn't want to be doing this. And then all of a sudden he would just change, and he would be like, you have to die. Like, you're evil when you have to die. He said that he was going to carve God and hope out of me, that he had overdosed. He had taken some pills, and that when he died, he saw nothing. And he said, there's nothing, it's just an abyss. But there was just really this battle between this darkness and him. Now he kept bouncing around blaming things. He blamed like the outlaws. He blamed another gang in the city. But he landed on this entity or this thing or whatever. And he gave me his name. But yeah, it was just crazy. It was bizarre. But as we commenced, I was in there for 6 hours with him. His plan had been to cut me into pieces, and then he was going to kill himself, and then he had a bomb for the police. But he wanted to stay there for 3 days. So it was 10, 11, 12 was the date that he picked. And he just wanted to be there for 3 days and torture me the whole time. So I asked if I could play the piano for him, thinking that might calm him down, So he let me play for a little bit, and that seemed to kind of touch him. But then he got cold again, and he was like, we're going into the living room. And he went into the living room, and he held the knife up to his throat. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And he's like, I can't handle it anymore, this battle between us. And I thought maybe this was my chance to kind of slip out. But as soon as I started making movement towards the kitchen, towards the door, he was like, no, you stay here. He's like, I want you to kneel beside me. And he's like, I just want you to be here for this moment. And I put my hand on him where he was holding the knife. And I just closed my eyes, and I focused as hard as I could on him and what was going on inside of him. And I saw nothing. There was nothing in there. And it kind of blew my mind, because generally if I focus on a person, I can see stuff that's going on inside of them, or I can kind of see like their aura, or whatever. It was just an abyss. Like, it was just black abyss. And so I just focused, and I spoke against it. And then he just sat up completely different, like just gone. He was gone. Like, he was not there anymore. And he was just like, we're going into phase 2. He's like, I'm going to go get your phone. You're going to call your son. You're going to tell him goodbye. He's like, I'm done. So he tied me back up to the radiator. He went out, got the phone, he came back in. I convinced him to let me go to untie me. I said, I just need to clean up the kitchen. There's blood splatter in there everywhere. I said, if we're going to be here for a little bit, let me clean up the kitchen. So he agreed. And while I was in there, I kept tapping the door handle. And he's scrolling through my phone. And every time I heard the door handle tap, he would jump up and look and be like, what, And finally, I heard him say, he was like, oh, I found something good. And I grabbed the door handle and I switched the lock and I ran out that door as fast as I could. I got across the street to a little convenience store. And I ran in and I told the boy behind the desk, I was like, you got to call 911. Like, there's somebody trying to kill me. And it was such a small town and nothing like this happens. And everybody was just like, what? But I hid back there. He ended up coming out, throwing the bomb into some hedges, and he took off. So the police came and they surrounded the house. They tried to get in, but he was gone. And I went into hiding until about 4:30 in the morning the next morning, where they found him wandering around. He seemed incoherent, but he did stick with his story. And he also told the police the name of the entity that he was claiming. But, who knows? Yeah.
Wow. So do you feel safe enough to share the name of the entity or not really?
No, I don't. It's a big deal for me to share it. Honestly, I've never shared it publicly. Like I said, because it's just it's an odd thing and you can't really explain it. But I do feel like names hold power. So I don't use it. And I don't know, honestly, I have traced this situation to the ends of the earth. So, was it demonic? Was it a protector? Was it me? Like, was it him? Maybe he was just, there's so many different facets of like, what exactly was this entity that was dealing between the two of us? I feel like as I've looked more into it and as more time has passed, it was almost like a protecting thing, but it seems so destructive that it's just confusing. But I did not talk about this.
I kind of figured you would give that answer, but I tried my luck anyway.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, I get it. You are right. And you have to be careful how you talk about those things as well.
Yes.
And I mean, he sounds like he went through it too. Whatever really happened with him.
He is still in prison. We went to trial a year later and, he went to jail and he's still there. His time is coming up soon, so we'll see, but I don't have contact, obviously. So I have no way of knowing what, and that kind of doesn't give it closure, but at the same time, I really don't. I do not wish to make contact. I wish him peace. And I wish that, he goes on with his life and goes to live the rest of it in silence and peace. And, I wish him well. I really do hope that he got help while he was there or, whatever.
Well, if, like you said, everything that makes him who he is gone, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
What can you do besides pray on it,
Yeah, right. And I mean, is it something that passes through? Is it something that just moved on? So I kind of became obsessed. I've always kind of enjoyed the spiritual side of things, obviously. But I kind of became obsessed with violence and the influence of just outside forces or outside things. And so there are certain cases of guys that I've talked to in the prison. There's one, he murdered his wife. And when I talked to him, he just seems so normal. And so we've had discussions about it. He was a farmer. They lived on a farm. He's just not somebody that you would remotely think, would snap like that. And I asked him, I can't even remember. We were talking about the supernatural and we were talking about, just weird experiences. And he said, yeah, he said, I was outside in the woods the day of the murder. He said, and all of a sudden everything was on repeat. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was just like, the same bird was calling and the same sounds were happening. He's like, and it just kept going on repeat and repeat. And he's like, and then I woke up and I had killed her. And, so that kind of he started that where I just asked people that had done a violent murder or just an out of the blue murder. What did they ever see anything strange in their life, just anywhere in their life before, it happened? And almost everybody has. So I've been trying to kind of put together some articles, like some blog posts and things like that on the different ones. One was a Ouija board. He felt like an entity came out of the Ouija board. One saw shadow people constantly before he did anything. And then another one, he prays to Santa Muerta. So his was more ritualistic, where he meant to make sacrifices to her. But all of them saw something or experienced something. Now, whether that's just the mind snapping or cracking and is just creating these hallucinations, or whether it is actual entities or influences that are already taking something that's in their head and twisting it. It's I can't answer that.
Well, between you and me and like 60,000 other people potentially, don't tell anyone. I believe you because of all of the stuff that's happened to me. And I was a career musician. I started at 14 years old teaching kids and moved on to the stage and stuff like that. And it took me into the dark world of the music industry that I think I never thought the day would come where P. Diddy would be on trial and where you would hear so much about the hidden, deep, dark entities that people experience in the music industry. And I just kind of, I don't know, in a way, I'm grateful that people are talking about it, but in a way, I wish that they would stop as well, because I feel like it's giving more life to these dark beings.
Yes.
And I got out and I had to wean myself off of even just playing for fun, because just like you, whenever I got too deep into it, things would happen. And I mean, up until 2021, during the pandemic, I would play on Instagram for kids. And I was sitting here one night in the same very spot playing, and all these orbs and stuff started just all around. And a couple of the kids were like, screw this, I'm out of here. What the heck's going on? And I tried to turn around to catch it. I just saw it in the camera. I was like, why are they freaking out, And that was when I was like, I'm calling it quits. I got to get myself onto something else, because even just trying to do passive stuff is inviting things that I don't know where they come from,
Yeah.
In my research, I've realized that apparently various parallel timelines or dimensions have lower and higher levels of, beings that inhabit them. And music seems to come from one particular dimension. I believe it was the 6th dimension that I found. But the lower entities love to mess with you, and they love to bind to you and follow you. And I just remember not loving that feeling. And just because it does take over you. Have you ever felt like something comes down and just touches the top of your head and you zone out, and all of a sudden you're just playing?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't like that as much as I should have, I think. And I think that was
it's cool at first. I think sometimes it feels empowering, but in the long run, it's not.
And I think that a part of wanting to get away from it is my actual spirit saying, no, you have to reject this, because the more you do it, the more, things about you change. because I did notice that too. Like the more I got into it, the more I leaned towards dealing with my problems through addiction, or the more I was really angry and couldn't process things correctly. So I think that anyways, without rambling on about myself too much, this conversation is necessary because people need to hear this and understand that whatever choices you're making, there's a tug of war between your spiritual self and these forces that the average person wants to deny don't exist for their own protection. But then so easily, like that farmer, it could happen to anyone, you know?
Yeah. And it's definitely, you know, like I said, I feel like because I was a child, because I was so young, it's not as unnerving to me just because it's, you know, who I talked to as a child. So it's kind of like I interacted with all that. But it's unnerving to me, like you said, that people don't see it or they don't recognize it. That just kind of blows my mind sometimes. And so you understand the whole pushback. So when you're trying to change something or do something or push into something greater for yourself, you always get that pushback. And it's just the weirdest thing. Today, I had a really high level of anxiety, and I haven't had that for a while. And I was just like, there's something about this podcast that, like, it's just a thing. It's just the ripples. It's the waves of the actions that we do. It just comes out, and there's that pushback. There's always something pushing back. So when I see a lot of people, you know, I deal with a lot of addicts all the time, and it's like this veil. And I try to tell everybody, I'm like, it's a veil. Like, you're being lied to. Like, your potential is insanely immense. Like, it's just huge. Like, you can, you know, for a while I got into trying to control the temperature around me. It was just kind of a fun experiment, and, you know, just focusing completely and being able to stand out in the snow in like a bikini, but focus completely where you weren't shivering, you just weren't cold. I was able to do that. Like, I could generate the heat and just fun stuff like that. And you think about, you know, if we can do those small things, and if these dimensions are interacting with us, we have such huge the human brain and just our human spirit has so much potential to cause change, to cause effect. But it's always like there's that pushback. There's always something that doesn't want us to do that. Like, something doesn't want us to live to our full potential. Obviously, in Christianity, it's the devil. You know, the devil's always against humans and doesn't want humans to succeed. And there is just some kind of force or entity or whatever that tries to keep humans quiet and sedated. I love the sedation thing because you see technology, drugs, all of it is just this huge sedation thing because none of us are pursuing any of that extra stuff. Like, none of it. Like, it's just straight. Like I said, I worked with horses, and if you were going to put a horse on a trailer, you're going to, you know, trank it a little bit so it's sleepy. It's just like what humanity is experiencing. Everybody's just sleepy. They're not looking for it. But I have been seeing, and it was super cool listening to your podcast and stuff like that, to see that there is a movement, kind of like people are waking up and people are being like, hang on a second, like, this doesn't fit and something's not right. And it's super cool to see that.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a couple of things there. First of all, start with the last. I'm glad that you got that vibe from the podcast, because this is exactly it. I want you to, you know, be able to email me and say, hey, let's just talk on your podcast. I have something I want to share. I want you to feel comfortable just coming to me and talking to me, and, you know that people will hear you. Secondly, it is so bizarre that you said what you said about trying to control the temperature, because I went through that phase too. Like, I remember being in the cold winter of Pennsylvania, just shoveling snow.
Yes.
And just removing another layer and another layer as the weeks passed by, because I read it in a book somewhere. You know, I read that this is what monks were practicing to do to strengthen their mind. And I got there it was frightening when I got there. So,
right. And you're just like, what am I doing right now?
yeah, because you get obsessed with it in a way. And then when you actually succeed, you can't believe that you did it.
Yes.
And you're
because
barefoot.
It's so mind blowing to think that we can do that. Like, I'm like, if we can do that, what else can we do? Like, it's
right.
Music, 1,000,000%. Like you said, music, in my experience, music has been able to touch so many people. Like it speaks to people, and it's just wild. Music is music is my thing too. Like it speaks to me, but, it's a whole, like, it is like another dimension. Would you say it was another dimension, or like it?
Yeah, like
Elaborate on this. I want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so I've discovered that it's like music can. You said elaborate, so let's go there. Music can bring aspects of yourself that are alive on other timelines or parallel dimensions. You can actually harness that energy and bring things through. But what I was saying to you is that I found out that music comes from the 6th dimension, but there's a lot of darker beings that can get to you quicker. And so that's one of the reasons why so much music is inherently negative. Even some worship music, you listen to the lyrical content of it and you just know that there's something perverted about that it doesn't make much sense. I'm pretty sure you shouldn't be saying that about Jesus. Those don't sound like, the correct feelings. It has just been fascinating to me to break away from that. And it's hard and it's difficult to talk to people about it because so many people depend on something else, especially music, to get through the day. And what I try to get people to understand is but that's an indication of your mental health. Your ability to cope, your natural ability to cope has been taken from you. It's been disarmed in such a way that you need to have another cup of coffee, listen to music all day long, or some people have music and the TV on at the same time because it's just anything to distract you from what's really going on inside. And I don't know how things got so bad. Do you remember Richard Marx? Did you ever listen to his music? He's big in the 80s. Something about right here waiting for you. It was a really big song, and I remember not liking it very much because it was too lovey-dovey. But anyway,
I kind of wasn't allowed to listen to secular music either for like first 18 years, so I kind of missed out on all of that.
I admire you for that.
That's what I mean. I was very just open-minded.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd ever heard it at any point. In there. It's such a big song that it still plays on like 80s playlists and stuff these days.
Maybe if I heard it.
Right. I'm not going to sing it, but I was listening to him talk about being 60 years old and realizing that as a musician, you reach a certain age and a certain level of maturity. You begin to see not just the good that being a musician has done, but the damage that it's done also to you and other people. And you see a totally different side of it that you never would have thought existed when you were 20 years old and whatnot, because you just wanted to be famous and you wanted to have a good time in the process of creating and playing,
Yeah.
And
music is extremely intoxicating.
Mm-hmm. It was very interesting to hear someone that had reached that level of acclaim actually come out and be honest about it and say that that's what they're thinking about right now, So you never would have heard that before. And I wonder how many times that conversation has been had by anyone else, like big name people, Michael Jackson or Prince or whoever, and they just realize, we can't get out of this, even if we tried. But not that I want people to take away from this, don't listen to music, but
no more music at all.
Question.
Chance only, no.
Yeah, question what you're actually using it for, because it's escapism just like everything else. And is the content, the energy of it contributing negatively to you under the surface that you don't even know,
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think people know, I think you do know when you're using it. Like I said, it's almost like an intoxicating feeling. Like you feel it with you. I don't know how to explain it, but you feel it with your soul. You can feel like it just moves you. And I think that that's powerful. It's a power that you're feeding into at that point. So
It's so funny. I'll wrap this up after I say this. It's like when I tell people I don't drink coffee, they're like, "What? So you just wake up?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You don't listen to music when you work out?" I'm like, "No." Well, why is it necessary? And I try to explain to them the same thing I just told you. If I need that to motivate, then am I not depressed on some level on the inside? Is there not something that is taking energy from me that I can't generate that inside myself? Is there not something difficult that I need to address because I can't generate joy on my own? Why don't I have any happy memories I can think of? Simple stuff.
Right.
But they all still kind of go like, what? So I don't know what to do. Do I just jump over the wall or something and run?
Yeah, that's a profound way of looking at it. I love that. Like you generate your own energy. I think it's the same thing as like whenever, you're content being alone. I'm very content to be alone. I like to think and I enjoy, thinking. I like not meditating, but just breathing and it's quiet and I like it. But yeah, people don't do that. It's like, yeah, you always have people have to have like a background noise. And it's so true. Like you can't just be you.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to tell people that I surround myself with animals because they don't speak. You can learn a lot when you're not talking, But
yeah, if you catch their eyes sometimes when they look at you, they're just like, seriously.
Very like, what is wrong with humans?
Right? Like they're just messed up.
But for someone that is in an abusive relationship, I don't want to say give advice, but what can they do to get out? Because I feel like as much as the other person is abusing you, it's still kind of a you problem that you need to address and figure out why you're still there,
Yeah, I ended up working in a domestic violence shelter for a couple of years, and the studies say that women at least will go back to an abusive partner 7 times before they will actually leave. And I think my advice in this situation is he's not going to change. Or she's not going to change because women can abuse men too. It's not just not a man thing. They'll mask it and they'll hide it and they'll, give you everything you want to hear. And they might be good for a little while, but they're never going to change. It's what they are. It's what they do. I think that's just really hard for people to accept. I know I like to see people change. I like to see the good in people. And so it's just super hard to stick to it. Like you can be like, okay, you treated me this way. I'm not okay with it. I'm walking out. But then you just go back because you just feel obligated to love them. And you have to just stick with it. You have to go, just cut it off, be done. Super abusive relationships, it might be scary and dangerous to get away from him. You've got to come up with a plan. And I tell everybody this quietly, just come up with a plan. Have a plan of escape, a place to go, someone that you can go to, a family member, a friend, and do have security measures in place. The world is real. I love talking supernatural. I love talking dimensional stuff. But at the same time, somebody with a knife to your throat is somebody with a knife to your throat. You're not going to outmuscle him. You're not going to outfight him. I totally thought I couldn't. So you always have to just be aware and just be aware. Don't be scared. Don't be paranoid, but just be aware of your surroundings and have that plan in place. And it might take a while, it might take a couple months to try to have the finances and the place to go, but make a plan, like do it, just make a plan. And when that moment comes, you'll know and you'll be able to get out.
Sound advice. I hope that there's nobody that's listening to this or like, oh, this is what I needed today. But
yeah, I hope so too. It's not a fun place to be.
No. But for yourself, what continues to fuel your passion for helping people?
Like I said, the whole veil thing that we were talking about, I feel like people are blinded. Some people are truly just completely gone, and they're going to do terrible things, and that's just what they're going to do. But a lot of people are just blinded, and they need to see a different option, a different perspective. And that's what gives me a passion to keep on keeping on and talking to people and working with people, because maybe, you give them a perception that they never thought about, or just a different direction to go, that could save other people down the road. If if you can put little seeds in everybody's head of just, their potential for greatness and for goodness, then you can save a whole group of people.
Right. Do you ever get attached to like prisoners and stuff? I don't want to call them prisoners. It sounds too serious. You get what I'm saying?
It's inmates. Yeah. I know you never really know what to call them because you feel rude either way. Yeah, for sure. I definitely, how you say, I always say that I can like understand why they do the things that they do, but I wouldn't want them living next door. And that's for like the hardcore. That's for like the serious. You're like, you can, I always say that jail is a good place for people to stay that can't function on the street. Just as far as like violence and murder go, like it's a good place for them to just, either recalibrate their mind, or maybe they won't recalibrate their mind, but they don't need to be out there hurting people. So it's not punishment. It's not, they have to pay the price, but it's just containment, so they're not out there, taking advantage of innocent people. But the juveniles that I've worked with this year, I absolutely get attached to because they're so young and they're just kids, and they've done some adult things, and it's just crazy. It's mind blowing to try to wrap your head around this kid sitting in a school classroom, falling out of his chair because he's the class clown, knowing that he did some pretty crazy stuff on the street. So yeah, I definitely get attached to those guys.
Right. And, it's hard when they're kids because you know yourself and you know that you've grown out of certain things, and
yeah,
you hope that they would grow up and out of those behaviors too, and those choices.
Yeah. And a lot of them, like if you read their family history and their lives, they have been through some things. They've been starved. Their families abandoned them. They've been abused. They've been some really dark stuff that no kid should ever go through. And if just somebody had stepped in and pulled them out of that, they wouldn't be where they're at. And, that's heartbreaking. It's crazy to see.
Why do you think people get so attached to prison and where they just repeat offend and just to get back in?
For them, all their friends are there. It's comfortable. They're being fed. And that sounds stupid, but a lot of people don't have three full meals a day. It's not a thing. So at least in prison, they have 3 full meals. They can go to the gym. They can work out every day. They have free medical benefits. Freedom is freedom, and nobody wants to be locked up. It's not a thing. Like everybody wants to have the freedom of choice, but they do keep coming back just because it's, like I said, they know a lot of people there. And for the adults that come back, most of that is drug use. Like they just get out and they can't. We had a gentleman that was locked up for 40 years and he got out and a week later was dead. He got fentanyl and overdosed and died. So that'll bring them back or that'll kill them. But yeah, it's just kind of, it's a lifestyle. And it sounds weird to say that, but I'd say probably about half of the guys do get out and they stay out, and that's pretty cool. It's good to hear, and you get updates from them and stuff, and it's encouraging. But the other half, yeah, they just can't. They can't help themselves.
I've always wondered how many of them are just really intelligent and they see that outside of the prison is a prison too. So they're just like, okay, I'm going back in there.
There are definitely a handful that are incredibly intelligent, for real. Like their concept of the world and just the way everything is. And like you said, they realize that just society is a prison. And I often say that once the system has a hold of you, you're never getting away from it, because it'll just keep hunting you down. Like, it'll just keep dragging you back. And, I've seen some guys come up for parole and get 6 more months for having a chicken patty in their pocket. And, everybody has their own way of like doing justice and doing things. But to me, I'm like, that's 6 months of somebody's life, so it's just this constant, they have to learn how to swallow hard and just accept things. And that's, they don't have freedom. So that's a hard thing to watch grown men have to do, because it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Like, I think of the things they've done, and I'm just like, and they're just, smiling and trying to take this because they have to. And it's wild.
Right. Do you think that there's anything particularly about intelligence that makes really intelligent people just want to self-sabotage or, abuse themselves, be addicted, all that?
1,000,000%. High intelligence is very lonely, I feel like, because you see the world in a way that other people don't see it. And you can see all the things that everybody's just blindly doing and blindly following. And you can either pretend that you don't see it and blend in with them, but you're never going to be comfortable, or you can just be alone and just watching everything.
And I think
it's and talking to the birds, which they're not that bad. But yeah, I definitely think that opens doors to dimensional work and things like that, because you are trying, you're trying to make a connection somewhere where somebody understands you. And I feel like that's very, very challenging. And in a lot of cases, you have to fit into society. You have to have a job. You have to do these things. And I feel like for highly intelligent people, that's extremely frustrating, because you just have to do it. And you're like, I know that things are just so much bigger than this. And I know the way everything works, but the cards you have are not those cards. So yeah.
Okay. So with regards to your trauma recovery workbook, can you share some steps with us?
Sure. The first one I feel like is probably the biggest one for me and is helpful, is recognizing your triggers. And that kind of sounds obvious, I guess. But I specifically wrote down what my triggers were. So clear blue sky in the fall is a trigger for me. The sound of screaming is a trigger for me. So Halloween, when you're going around trick-or-treating and you hear all these noises coming from the porch, it's really hard. Like, you're like, oh, okay. Like, and zip ties. Zip ties were a trigger for me for a long time. And I worked on a farm, so we had to keep using them. I just feel like I don't want to hold those. Like, please put them away. But just recognizing that, specifically recognizing it, and then coming up with like a plan of what you're going to do when you run into it, because you can't just hide away forever from life. There's going to be clear blue skies and you're going to have to go outside and function and do things. So what do you do when you go out there and you feel that panic and that anxiety? And I just recognize it. And I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. Everything's okay. You're just feeling this way because it reminds you. And then I usually grab, a wall, a stone, the ground, like something that's tangible, that's naturistic. And I just hold on to it and I concentrate, and I just concentrate on that feeling and just how real it is. And it's in this moment. And I think you're in this moment. You're not in that moment. You're in this moment. And think about what's going on around you and just start listing things off. Like, there's a bird singing over there. There's a leaf that fell off a tree there. And you just come back to the moment. So that's part of the workbook. I have people just write down what their triggers are and then just make up a plan, like come up with a plan on how you're going to deal with it. It really works, like, for real. It sounds so trivial, but it definitely works, because I just know. I'm like, okay, I'm about to fall apart. Like, I was real bad at first. Like I couldn't go grocery shopping without falling apart, and couldn't walk through the city. So just to come from that to being able to be like, okay, I've got these feelings. And like I said, like time has passed. And so it's not as potent. However, every fall, like these last couple weeks, it's just been there in the back of my head. Like last night I had nightmares, just random nightmares, but it's just because it's that time of the year. So I just know that. And I try to just take time to relax and be quiet. I don't work a lot of overtime during this time of year. So I'm just not burnt out. So I'm just calm. Another one is adrenaline. It's probably my favorite one. I love adrenaline. I'd worked on a horse farm, and horses are insane. I got bit and kicked and all kinds of stuff. But in the moment when your adrenaline is high and you're like, I'm going to die because this horse is going to kick me in the face because he's rearing. In that moment, that's the only thing you're thinking about. And it just releases your mind. It releases all the anxiety, all the stress, because you're completely focused on that moment. And I love to ski. So skiing's a big adrenaline thing for me because I am not a good skier. I like to do it, not good at it. So I'm coming down the slope and I'm like, I'm going to die. Like this is it, and you get that rush and you get that feeling and it just cleanses your system. So that's a big one, and everybody's adrenaline is different. It could just be running for some people. You don't have to go fall down a slope on skis. Like you could just run or swimming or whatever it is that, gives you that jolt of life, and it helps you to just get out of your head. Shadow work is a huge one. I advise this for everybody, not even people with trauma, just in general. Meeting yourself is insane. I did a bunch of books. I did, codependency, and I did some workbooks and just all this. And I came to a shadow work journal and I was like, this sounds kind of, okay. It was brutal. I would do some of the exercises and then I'd have to put it down because it was just like, wow, like I did not know that about myself. I didn't know that's part of who I am. And these are the facets of me. And, but once you know yourself like that and your darker self and you put yourself all together, it's incredibly healing. Like it's incredibly freeing as a person. And that was kind of what really broke the barrier for me to start sharing and start to talk to people, was becoming confident in who I am completely.
Okay, great. Well, RJ, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. Tell everyone where they can find you.
It's www.girlthatgotout.com. And just get a hold of me there. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you because I love this stuff. So it's super cool.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks again.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
All the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.